Joining us now is our politics editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, who's been watching these many developments for quite some time, decades, dare I say. And here we are at another turning point. Great to see you, Mzwandile. Thanks for popping by.
Good to see you too.
So you're a man about town. You know the right people. Your phone is always ringing. What are we hearing about when this announcement might happen?
Well, I almost said your case is as good as mine, but maybe let me not say that. So chances are it could be either late today, but most probably tomorrow. And so you correctly put it at the beginning that the president doesn't have a time limit of when he can do it. But obviously, I don't think he's comfortable to continue being the president and all the ministers because he currently carries all the executive authority. You remember upon his taking oath of office yesterday, the government then dissolved. So he is the sole human being right now in terms of our government who carries that executive authority. So he would want to do that as soon as possible. But we know it's not that easy, given that it's not just from one party.
Absolutely. We spoke to Vincent Magwenya yesterday at the Union Buildings. He said to us that as soon as he walks out of that venue, he is going straight into those negotiations to try to cobble together whatever his executive is meant to look like. And we really don't know, right? So I think it's important to admit that much. But there may be signs. One of them may be in KwaZulu-Natal. We saw how that provincial executive took shape. It's also a multi-party government of national unity type arrangement. And maybe there's, some kind of extrapolation we could draw from there around how things shaped up.
Well, I'm not sure if that will be the case, because in KZN, for example, the leading party there didn't take part. The Umkhonto weSizwe party, so they did not form part, so they were not so much in the driving seat. So then you had smaller parties, obviously compared to what MK got, forming government, and it's being led by the IFP, which from those smaller parties is actually the biggest. So perhaps it would be their thinking in terms of how to create that kind of government. So in this instance, you have a party which has the largest number of votes and taking really command of what should happen. So we expect some sort of perhaps proportional representation, maybe not necessarily to the strictest sense, but perhaps reflecting that. And you know, as much as it's the ANC and the DA in the main, there is IFP, there is PA, there is PAC, and some of the other smaller parties which are still going to join. But are they all going to be part of the executive? I think that's where the question is, because yes, some of those parties have just one seat. I think in this instance, that would be the PAC and Good.
Right.
So how will that reflect? But also, I don't think it's just about numbers. You also will want to look at the quality of your executive, because, I mean, if you listened, I understood the speech of the president, where he basically says, we accept what South Africans have said to us. And then we actually are ready to respond to their call, because all South Africans said is, we want services, but we realize that if we give one party a mandate, perhaps they don't do as much as we want them to do. So in the crafting of that cabinet, he will obviously, even when he's consulting with other colleagues from the DA, the IFP, the PA, he will have that in mind. You don't just want to put bodies there, but you want to put people who are fit for purpose, particularly for this moment.
Right, absolutely. I'm watching also, by the way, the ANC Youth League seemingly taking their seats. So if I interrupt you, so I apologies in advance. But we also, in some ways know that the president does have the prerogative to appoint people outside of Parliament, right? And there had been calls for years for him to try and do that, bring in the experts in the private sector, people who know what they're doing, to take charge of some portfolios. I guess it's anyone's guess whether or not he'll do it this time around.
Oh, yes, and it's been happening. I think the previous presidents have been doing that. I mean, you're allowed to appoint two people who are not necessarily members of Parliament. And in this instance, I think one of the areas that people have been looking out for, you'd recall that Minister of International Relations, Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor, I think didn't make it to Parliament. And I mean, her statement earlier, even before the compiling of the list, she had expressed an interest in perhaps staying out, but I think the ANC persuaded her. So my suspicion is that she could be the beneficiary of that, because I mean her role currently and where we are on our foreign relations, perhaps she is the person who, in terms of continuity, would be the right person to continue with that. So I suspect she could be the beneficiary of that. But he can also, the president can also go beyond and do and appoint someone else. But also not lost to us is the fact that he is not only touching from the base of the ANC or from the pool of the ANC. There is also there are also people from the DA and other parties that will form part of the GNU.
Yeah.
And I know it will be obvious on consultation and recommendation, I guess, on what those parties are saying. But this is what I think we should also not forget, as you correctly said. Even if people are allowed to do consultation and recommendations, it remains his prerogative, him and him alone, to appoint the members of the executive.
In fact, and we've tried asking even the people closest to him, and that's the response we're getting. Mzwandile Mbeje, thanks as always for popping by, helping us make sense of these seminal moments as they take place. Mzwandile Mbeje, of course, our politics editor here at the SABC.